Hello, friends, and welcome to the Friendly Show. I am your host and friend, Lee. I am so excited for you guys to be here. I am going to just really quickly do a couple things behind the scenes that I have to do only when I log in. I think I can now do this over to Facebook. I think. I think the problem has been that it's always been I have to like make it public. So anyway, we're going to see. I think this is going to work. Fingers crossed. Also, fingers crossed that the whole show goes well because Mike is not here and I do not know how to connect directly to the internet. So I'm on Wi-Fi right now. So I don't know. Anyway, welcome to the show. I'm your host. I'm your friend, more importantly, Lee. And more importantly, see that? So let me see. I'm hoping if you guys are here, can you hear me? Because also the setup of the mic is a little bit different. So I'm not 100% sure that you can hear me well, but fingers crossed. Okay, so if you guys are new to the show, this is a little different than most shows. I'm not sure if there's some shows that do this, but um, this is the way that I like you to think about our friendly show. I want you to picture that I've invited you over to my home, and maybe you've invited a friend or two to come with you. I've invited a few friends, and we're all just hanging out in my living room. And maybe when you walk in, we're talking about a certain topic. But if you've ever been in life with me in real life, that means that we are probably going to squirrel to a bunch of other topics. And that is always my favorite part of the show is when you are participating. So, this is the way that we do it. I am always recording live. Will I do some pre-recorded down the road? Maybe, but we've almost been doing like 40 episodes and they've all pretty much been live. And so whenever you guys have a comment, so if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or X, whenever you guys have a comment, I pull it right up on the screen and now you're a part of the show. But the cool thing with that is that you can be live on the show, but you can be in your pajamas. You don't, because you're not going to come up on video. You're just going to be there in the comments. And so we get to have a conversation. And what we did a couple months ago is we started really focusing the conversations around a certain theme every month. And then each week we focus that theme around one of the 5 pillars of the happy framework that we talk about over in our Facebook group. So if you're not part of the Facebook group, I highly encourage you and invite you to come and join that with us. It's the Friendly Show. So I really hope to see you over there. Throughout the week, I do live videos there, and then we kind of just continue the conversation. And so what the 5 pillars are is it's 5 ways of looking at our life and finding the happy moments. And this month, so I'll go through what the 5 pillars are. It's happy, affection for ourselves, it is purpose, partnerships, and then youthfulness. So, how are we showing up in those 5 areas? And I've done challenges. I'm going to bring back a challenge because I need it. And I know that everybody that has done it has loved it. I shouldn't say that. There were a couple people that were like, "Oh man, it's just another thing." Totally fine. So maybe it's not for everybody, but if you want a challenge of, you know, kind of being more intentional about your happiness, then I will give you more information next week about when we're starting. And but those 5 areas I think are kind of the most important areas, but also really the easiest for us to really focus on, especially on the hard days. So, this week, so last week we talked about health and affection for ourselves. How do we show ourselves that we love ourselves? And then this week we are going to be talking about purpose and our theme. And our theme this month is Suicide Awareness Month. Okay. So I'm not making that month up. That is what this month is. So if you want to take it a little bit deeper, you can maybe go for a walk. I'm sure there's a walk in your local city or region. You could do a walk, you could raise money, you could just start the conversation with people. And one of the simplest ways is to ask how people are doing and then not walk by them. Ask, hey, how are you doing? And then wait for their answer. And when they answer, if they say, I'm okay, then ask, "Just okay? Is anything going on?" Like, you can just be inquisitive. Um, or you can share what's going on with you. I had an encounter, and I'm gonna just share this with you guys. I had an encounter with a friend of mine, and I've known her for years. We, have been friends for, oh my gosh, it's probably close to 20 years, which blows my mind because I only knew her in my adult life. So how is that possible? But anyway, I've known her for quite a while. And we're not best friends, but we see each other quite often, usually in passing because we live very close to each other. And I know that she's been struggling with some things. She's kind of, said things on Facebook, not really being clear about what it is, but just saying that she's, going through a time right now. And so I saw her while we were on a walk, and I was on a walk by myself, and I was ready actually to turn around to go back home because I like reached, my halfway mark. And then I saw her a couple blocks ahead, and I was like, I'm gonna go up and just, see how she's doing. And so, I asked, I was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm okay. I'm okay." And like totally would have just been like, and she's like, "How are you?" And I was like, I'm not doing okay. I'm having a really hard time." And this was maybe, I feel like maybe I saw her on Thursday, maybe Friday, something like that, maybe even Saturday. I don't know when I saw her, but I saw her last week. And I told her, I said, I have been going through like these spouts of like major crying, I'm going through a lot right now. And a lot of it is the work that I'm doing on myself. And newsflash, working on ourselves is really important, but sometimes it's not pretty. Sometimes it sucks. And sometimes it brings up things that we're just not ready to deal with, which is also okay. Um, and when I told her that I was struggling too, we both broke down and we both cried together. And we were both able to share what we've been going through and in a very sweet way. And that wouldn't have happened if I would have just accepted her okay. And when she said, "How are you?" and I said, "Okay." And then we would have just separated ways and she would have went on her way and I would have went back home and that would have been it. But instead we got to connect. I got to learn a little bit more about what she's actually dealing with. Um, and it was really, really beautiful. Um, and so if you're listening, thank you for that. Thank you for opening up to me. You know who you are. Um, and I really, really appreciate it. So I personally have been on this like struggle train for a little while. And it is like every time that I'm feeling like, "Okay, I think I've got this," like, I think I'm getting there, wherever there is, something comes up that's like, "Oh, by the way, hey, knock, knock. You didn't look at this part of it." And, I have said that I really want to really dive in, really do the work, and now, it's almost like at a point where I can't turn back. Like I'm now seeing things that I can't unsee, and I got to just work on clearing them up. And so I just watched a movie with my sister, and we went to the movies, and it ends with us. If you guys haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. But I have been giving like the trigger alert that if you have dealt with any kind of unprocessed trauma around um, abuse or rape or anything like that, be aware of that as you go through this movie because the movie, it was an amazing message. And to me, it was an amazing movie. It was a really good, it was one of those, it's a new Blake Lively movie. And it was really good. But when I got home, I realized, holy crap. I thought I've dealt with my stuff. I thought I was over it. I thought I was like, and I was not. And I literally went through that night. So you guys know, I've talked about this on the show. I don't hide it. And I actually thought I've processed a lot of it. I thought it was okay. So it was like close to 25 years ago. Um, I went through a date rape, and that's actually how I lost my virginity. And I had all of this. We've talked about it on the show. Like, I was like hugely Catholic, Roman Catholic, and so not only, like, did that happen, but also it's like, now I'm going to hell. Like, there were so many layers to this thing that was just, like, awful. And I did not process it the first 20 years of my life. I shut it down and was okay. I was okay. That was something that happened to me, and that's okay. Like, I can now move forward and I can work my little tail off and I can be successful and I can be in relationships. Like, I can do all the things, right? And I just pushed it down. And in the last 5 years, I've been doing a lot of personal development where I have realized that that was actually um, a big trauma in my life that actually, um, it it, like, seeped into a lot of parts of my life that I didn't realize. And I'm still learning that, like, oh my gosh, it's another reason why I'm this way. And so it was really fascinating to me. And so I've done, therapy, and I'm continuing. I'm actually gonna find another therapist, not to replace my therapist because I absolutely adore her. But I also think I need to, see somebody else so then I can just add layers and different angles to all of these things because I want to speed my way through this. Um, but the only way to do that is by doing the work and by seeing it from different angles. And so anyway, so I thought I was clear. I thought I was done. I thought that was like in a bow, put it on the shelf. That's done. I've dealt with it. I thought I dealt with it. And then I saw this movie and I viscerally went through that whole moment again. And, we've talked about it on the show. We read in book club, The Body Keeps the Score. And oh my dear Lord, does it ever. Like I could feel it all through my body as if it were happening again. Um, so it was absolutely fascinating to me. So, that is all to say that, Suicide Awareness Month, um, I am not struggling with I'm not struggling with suicide. I have never attempted, but I can absolutely see how easy it can become when you're consumed by trauma, um, by unprocessed feelings, emotions, experiences, and not having support around you. I could absolutely see how people get there. And I think it's really, really important for all of us to be having these conversations. Um, because I know for sure if I did not have the support that I have, and shout out to all of my friends and my family and my mom and dad and sister and Mike. Um, if I didn't have that support, I don't know where I'd be truly. Um, because I can see how that can very quickly get in a hole and not wanna come out because there's days that I don't want to get out of bed. There's days that I went to go see the movie, and then that night, I had all of this where I was weeping like a baby. I was hyperventilating, like, it was really, really bad, because that whole thing took over my body, and I could step outside of myself and look at myself and say, "Oh my gosh, okay, like, you're not there now. You're here, you're safe, you're okay," and it's still. And the only thing that got me out of bed the next morning, and that's why this topic I think is really important about having purpose. The only thing that got me out of bed that morning was, because I wanted to go to work. I love my job. And, that's not to say, like, become a workaholic and push all that down, but staying in bed that day would not have helped me. But going and being able to let my nervous system just kind of relax a little bit, and go into work and having that as my purpose. That was my purpose for that day. There was nothing else. It was just I had a day full of things that needed to get done that I wanted to do, and that helped me get out of bed. And I had a meeting that I had to get out of bed, right? That doesn't work for everybody. There's people that have to go to work and they don't, and they call in sick or they don't call in at all. So it doesn't work for everybody. But if, there's a difference when you actually enjoy what you're doing. And so that's why I think for me, and for many, having purpose in life is really, really important. It's important for us in thriving. It's important for us in moving our bodies and our life and our future forward. Like having purpose in life is important, but especially when we are struggling, having some sort of purpose is paramount. We absolutely need it. And that purpose does not need to be it does not need to be anything that is life-changing. It doesn't need to be like, "Oh my gosh, now great, on top of everything else I have to worry about, now I have to figure out what my ultimate purpose is." No, in my opinion, and again, I'm gonna give the disclaimer right now, I give it at some point through the show, and this is the perfect time. I am not a healthcare professional. So I am your friend. We are sitting around my living room. We're having a conversation, I hope. Oh, I got a comment. Okay, so we are gonna be having a conversation. Um, and so I'm not a healthcare professional in any means. So anything that you hear in the show, whether it's from me or from one of the comments that you read or that I read, um, it is meant for educational and entertainment purposes. Okay. It's coming from my experience, it's coming from the listener's experience. If anything touches you and it makes you consider, hey, maybe this is kind of me, and you feel like you want to like dive into something that we've talked about, and it has anything to do with treatment, or anything, please go and see a healthcare professional and talk it out with them. Don't take anything from this show and apply it without knowing how it's going to affect you. Okay, so that's it. That's my little disclaimer. So let me head in here. And Sarah is here. Hello, Sarah. Also, if you are here, can you tell me, um, can you hear me? Is the level and everything okay? Because we usually have like a soundboard here and we don't have it, so I don't know. Anyway, Sarah says, "I left the movie with a full body reaction. I feel you." Oh, woman. Okay. Yeah. Um, I have been like, I've watched movies that I've been scared and it's like, "Oh my gosh." I've watched movies that I have felt really empowered and was like, "Oh my goodness, like I can go and take on the world." I have watched movies that I've been like really sad for the characters. I think this might be one of the first times that I actually it was my story that I was watching unfold on the screen. Not exact, so please don't, go and watch the movie and be like, "Oh, let me see what her story exactly was." Nobody's experience is identical. Nobody's story is exactly the same. But there was a lot in there that was just like, "Holy crap, that's that's a lot." So yeah, Sarah, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, but also the way that I've been looking at it is like, wow, that's awesome that our body is obviously telling us something, and it's up to us whether or not we want to process it or not. Sarah says all good. Okay, good. Thank you. I'm glad. And so I've been trying to process. I've been trying to go through this. And oh, it is hard. It is not easy. And I actually told Mike this morning, I was like, babe, just to let you know, I am not processing anything until Monday. So he's a therapist. And it is so interesting, but I'm sure he's just like, "All right, that's funny that you think that you can just put this timeline on things," but he doesn't. He's like, "Okay, that's okay." Um, but I just feel like I just don't wanna process anything right now. I'm, like, fit to be tied. There was just too much. Last week, I told you I had just come out of this, like, major it was my birthday. And usually my birthday doesn't make me cry, like, except for when I was a kid, which I wanna dive into that and figure out what that was all about, but usually my birthday is just another day, like, I don't really care. Um, but it just so happened that on my birthday, the night before, I had gone to a friend's funeral, and Well, it was their mom, and it catapulted me into all of this stuff, and I have not recovered from that. It's been an entire week, over a week, that I've just been absolutely emotional, diving in, doing the work, thinking about everything. Like, I wonder if this is part of what this is, and like, why am I like this, and all this stuff. And now I'm just like, done. I don't want to do anymore. But I wanted to come here on the show because we do this every Wednesday night. And I love you guys. I love the conversation that I get to have with you guys. And I think the purpose piece is really, really important. I think it's really important to be talking about. And I think it's really important that we don't make this into this big thing. Okay. Like, I think it's really, really important for us to be kind of diving into like what purpose means to you, because that's all that matters. Who gives a shit what the books say, what the webinars say, what I say? It doesn't matter what anybody else says. What does purpose mean to you? When I say that to you, what does that mean? Finding your purpose, or living your purpose, or being your purpose. What does that mean to you? And I would love for you to share it in the comments. But I will talk a little bit more of that um, after this comment. So Sarah says, I bet so many left feeling the same. It's happened to so many. Yes. And that, so, it was funny. Well, it's not funny at all. Um, but in therapy, might have been last week, but might have been my session before, we were talking about the rape and how, I was able to, in those moments, I was able to, there's a thing about being able to, like, you're standing in your story, where when you're sharing your story, you are still very highly emotional, highly charged by the story. And that is you standing in your story. You're in it. You haven't quite made it to the other side of it. So there's a process through this, right? And there's not a timeline that I can be like, and then after 2 weeks, after processing, after doing this workbook, there's none of that. But as you're going through it, and there's layers to it. So you may feel like you're standing on or standing in your story, and then you may feel like, oh, I can stand on the story. I can now be on the other side of whatever that story is, and now I can share the lessons that I've learned, and I can stand on that story and share it with others, and help others learn from it. And that's where, like people say, there's a message in your mess. And so whatever you've kind of gone through, once you are able to get out of being in your story, you can stand on it. What people don't talk about is you can be standing in your story, and then you can stand on your story and share it, which I've done on the show. I actually did it in the show when we did First Day Pod. And if you're watching on Twitter, hello. Um, Mike and I will eventually do another episode together. But for right now, you just got me. So what people don't talk about is that you can jump in and out, where you're in the story, you're dealing with it, you're doing the work, or you're maybe not even doing the work, you're just in it, and you like are reliving it, and going through all this turmoil, and you can't get out of it. And there's people that live in that story, whatever that story is, for years, decades, their life, whatever the case may be. And then you can get out of it, and you can share it with other people and allow them to know that they're not alone, and that you understand, and here's how it unfolded for me, and here's what I learned, and here's how I got through it. And you give, your experience, and it helps other people. What people don't talk about is that then you can also fall back in to the story, and you're not on it fully, because something happens that you relive it, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm there again. And that's what happened to me. I literally was talking to my therapist, like I said, last week or the time before. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I told her, I was like, I don't think the rape was that big of a deal. It was a big deal for me. It was very traumatic for me, but so many people go through, like, really bad rapes. Like how is this so to say this out loud is just ridiculous. For me to be admitting this, but that's how I felt. And so she's like, "So you feel that because you weren't raped by gunpoint in a scary forest somewhere, that it didn't matter, that it wasn't bad?" And I was like, "Actually, yeah." Because in movies, that's what we see, right? That it was like this woman was abducted and then she was going through this thing and it was just violent and it was horrible, and then she was, like, locked in a car and then thrown into the river. Like, all of this kind of, like, big cinematic kind of thing, and it's awful and it's horrible. All of it is horrible. Mine was a date rape. Mine was in his apartment when he was tutoring me. Um, I said no a million times and just waited for it to be over, but he there was no gun, there were no weapons. It was just that, and I downplayed it. And I was like, "Well, so that's not really a story to share, you know?" And she's like, "You have no idea how many people go through this type, that it is their husband or their boyfriend or somebody that's really close to them." And so they have that exact same feeling. The exact same feeling that I had, that who am I to make a big deal about this, because it wasn't this big scary thing, but it was super traumatic. And so then I go and see this movie, and that's what this movie is all about. It's generational trauma, that these women dealt with it, and it wasn't by a stranger in, a black ski mask. Um, so yeah, Sarah says, yes, even a spouse. Exactly. And that's what this movie was all about. That it was the spouse, the person that you love, the person that you married or that you decided to be in a committed relationship with, that you trusted, um, and then they violate you. And how many people go through that is horrifying, because you can't even look at statistics. This is the thing that I try to explain to people when they're like, they start using statistics, and it's like, one in, I don't even know what the statistics are because I think it's bullshit, but they'll be like, it's only one in X amount of people that have reported, or they don't even say report, they say that have been, sexually abused, or that have been raped, or that have been whatever, right? And I'm like, I didn't report mine. I didn't report mine because that, like, the shame that goes around it, if I report it and then I have to go through this, now I have to live through this again, like, I'm just gonna, like, just move on and just, like, bury this shit and move on with my life. Um, there is so many things. If it's your spouse, if it is your parent, if it is your uncle, if it is the priest, if it is anything, how many scenarios are there that you would not report it? And if there's all those scenarios that people are not reporting it and it's still a staggering number, then this is a horrifying, horrifying problem in our culture. And in other cultures too. I only speak from experience. I'm only talking about, like, us in North American life, that this should never be happening. Um, anyway, so um I can also see that, people not reporting it and dealing with that, and then also not being able to get out of the relationship. And that's why this movie, it was called It Ends With Us. Um, it's all about generational trauma. And it's like, you have to get to a point that it's like, okay, where does it end? And it's really hard. It's really hard to um, make those decisions. And sometimes that's the decision that ends up happening, is that the only way to end it is for me to be no longer here, right? So this month is really important to be understanding, that it's not when people are dealing with suicide, it is very rarely this happened and now I want to take my life. I'm sure that happens. I'm sure it's like, "Oh my gosh, now I can't deal with this," and then here it is, and it's, like, super dramatic or traumatic, and then here we are, and it's, like, all within a quick thing, but usually it's not. Usually, it is deep-seated things that have happened years, decades ago that you have not been able to process because we don't know how to process this stuff. It's not taught in schools, and then it's in your body, and then you can't get away from it, and then your body starts looking for evidence that all of the stuff that you're feeling, that you're not worth it, that, you know, people are not listening to you and your voice doesn't matter and all of this kind of thing, and you find evidence to confirm all of this, and then it becomes too much. So that's why I think having these conversations with your friends, with people that you know, when they say, "Yeah, I'm okay," ask what that means, and be ready to have conversations with people. And you don't have to have any of the answers. You don't, you know. And I said this last week, but I think I'm going to probably say this every week because I know that there's a lot of people, and I used to feel this way. Is that, well, I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to put the idea of suicide in somebody's head. And I will tell you, if somebody has the idea or has had the idea of suicide in the past, um, it's there. By you saying something isn't gonna be like, "Oh, shit, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, tonight, I mean, I wasn't even thinking, but tonight, I'm gonna try it again." That's not how that works. It's not. So, but what might happen by you asking and being curious and wanting to be there and wanting to listen, they may be thinking about it and nobody cares, and it doesn't matter. And what if I was gone? Who cares? Nobody would notice, to all of a sudden, "Oh shit, Lee would notice. Lee cares? Oh my gosh, okay. I'm gonna talk to you about it." So that's more what will happen if we start having these conversations rather than it's your fault that you brought it up. And so I think, this is totally a tangent. Like, I have not, you guys know, I rarely really prep for how we're gonna have these conversations because if you were coming over to my house, I wouldn't be prepping and being like, "Okay, let me get my stats together." Um, but I wasn't actually expecting to talk about my experience with that whole thing, but it was so big for me this week and kind of blindsided me. That I just think it's super important. So Sarah says, "I bet by our age, it is most that have had at least one experience and never said it happened to them." Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I do not disagree with that. I think by our age, by mid-age, by 40, by 50, unfortunately, um, what's interesting is every woman that I have talked to and asked the question, because like started the conversation and be like, "Oh, I'm really dealing with this thing." Um, every woman has shared some sort of experience with me. I don't know that I'm really trying to think right now if I have talked to anybody that has said, "Oh my gosh, poor you. I'm so sorry. I don't even know what you're going through." Not one person. Not one person, which is horrifying. Hey, Jeezy doctor in the house. Okay, so you say, and hello, I'm so glad you're here. Is there any part of your sessions where your therapist asks you to forgive the person for some type of closure? I may be wording it wrong, but you know how someone says you forgive the person who wronged you, not for them, but for yourself, so you can move on and not suffer internally? So that's a really, really good question. And okay, so my therapist did ask me that, and I actually forgave him many years ago. The problem with this is that okay, so and I know that's a weird smile when I do that. That's like my, here we go, let's not cry so we can get through this because I think this is really important. Um, I forgave him a lot of years ago, and I am going to be doing more work and really trying to figure out, did I truly forgive him? Have I just said I forgave him? But I actually did forgive him. I forgave him because I don't think he was wrong. Okay. So I don't ever want to say, like, oh, it wasn't his fault. Oh, poor guy. That was a horrible decision to make. So, uh, and I think it does take a certain type of person to be able to do that. But I also know that with trauma, we can have a coping mechanism of dissociating from our body, dissociating from the experience, where we can do things, say things, be a certain way that isn't our true self. Um, and so I forgave him many years ago because I was like, you know what? I'm sure, like, I can't imagine a human being feeling good about watching somebody suffer, feeling good, seeing somebody crying, saying no, just screaming for it to stop and to continue going. And then for you to get out of it, because this is what I think of. Not in the moment, because in the moment, who knows what's going on in his mind, who knows whatever, who knows what's going on. But when you then go to bed at night and you are quiet with yourself, we replay things, right? I replay things all the time. I'm sure you replay things all the time. I'm sure he replayed it. And there is absolutely no way, unless there is something truly mentally wrong, that part of your brain doesn't work, that he doesn't feel bad and see my face when he thinks about that. So, that being said, I forgave him because I'm like, he must have been going through so much that, like, who does that? And it's not been a thing where I have been like, oh my God, he was horrible. He was. I mean, in that moment, he made poor, poor decisions. But it wasn't forgiving him. The big thing that I had to do, and that I thought I did, that this movie proved to me that I did not, is forgive myself. Forgive myself for not leaving, forgiving myself for being stronger, which is bullshit. Um, Forgiving myself for all the things that didn't even matter, that, like, in that moment I did my best, um, of where I was, and I still haven't. And that movie proved to me that that's still an issue for me. And it proved it to me because when I watched the scene, and I'll just give you, like, so, hey, if you're looking to go see that movie, stop listening to our podcast right now because I'm gonna spoiler alert. But in that movie, when she was being raped by her husband and she kept saying, no, don't do this, don't do this, look at me, don't do this, and she got away, that's the part that really, really was a struggle for me, because I watched what I wanted to do and that I didn't feel like I was strong enough to do it. And I think that's kind of part of the problem when people say, "You're so strong. Oh my gosh, you're so courageous. Oh my god, you've got all these great qualities." And I'm like, I couldn't even protect myself. Like, I couldn't be strong in that moment. And that's bullshit, because we're not taught how to do that. Like, even if you go into, like, self-defense, you're not taught that, like, when you're in a situation like that, how to get out of it. You're taught that when somebody aggressively comes and, puts a hold on you, how could you get out of it? But when you're going through that, there's so much that's happening. And so that's what I have to work on. I have to work on forgiving myself. And that's hard, because as a people pleaser, I can forgive everybody. Like, you could punch me in the face and I can be like, I'm sorry, was I in the way? Like, so that's a really, really good question. And I do completely agree that that saying about, forgiving somebody else that has wronged you is for yourself and not for them. And that is 100%. I completely agree with that because you holding on to resentment and all of that kind of stuff, it's like, they say it's kind of like giving wanting somebody to die of poison, but you taking the poison and expecting that person to die, because you're just taking in all of that toxic feeling and that negative feeling. It's not worth it. The problem is that I haven't forgiven myself yet. And maybe this conversation has been really good for me. So thank you for bringing that up. But that's the truth of it, and I think that's a big part of it. I think that's also a part of why it's not reported, because a lot of the time, although we're really upset that the thing happened, we're really upset with the person. Mostly we're upset with ourselves. We're upset with ourselves for putting ourselves in that situation. Um, I went to my priest that night. I couldn't sleep, and I told you I was, like, super Roman Catholic. And he was really good with me, like, letting me know that because my biggest thing was like, "Oh, shit, now I'm not going to heaven." Like, when I die, I'm not gonna see my parents, and I'm not gonna see any of my family or my nana or anybody because now I've screwed up, and, there was that level on top of it, and my priest explained it to me that, that's not true, and you can still go to heaven and blah, 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 go do your penance and all this shit that is garbage, you guys. It's like, and if you're very religious and you don't believe that, I'm sorry if I just offended you. It's my thought. I don't think that we're going to go to hell because we had a bad experience, especially when it's like put on us by somebody else. I just don't. My God doesn't believe in that anyway. So, um, but one of the things now I'm just realizing, which at the time I thought was really good advice, and I'm just processing this right now. So, GZ doctor, thank you so much for bringing this up because this is what I love. Like, if you were in my living room right now, I'd just be like reaching over the couch and giving you the biggest hug. So, my part of my story was that my priest was so awesome and made me feel really good about it. And he did. And that was the story that I told myself that got me through it, that then I could like push everything down and move on and finish school and graduate and get a job and get a career and do all the things. Right. One of the things that he said that has always stuck with me, and it was funny because I went to a high school that was a Catholic high school, and it was the same freaking message, which I thought was really cool of this religion teacher. He's since passed, I think, but he was a very, very cool teacher. He's very like current and understood that life happens. Um, but he was like, when it came to sex, I was like a no-go, right? Like we're not gonna do that until you're married. And so what the teacher said was, in this class, we're gonna learn that we're gonna make that decision. So then when we're put in the situation, then we've already made the decision. And he likened it to, if you're trying to lose weight and you decide that you're not going to have sugar, then you just make the decision that you're not going to have cake. So if you're going to go into your birthday and there's cake, you just make the decision before you walk into the door that you're not going to have any cake. And by making that decision, then when you see the cake, you say, no, my decision was no cake. And then you don't eat the cake. And that's wonderful. So, same situation, it was like you're presented with sex and you get to decide, will I accept this sex or not? Right? So make the decision prior. And this was like in grade 9 or grade 10 or whatever. And this is like how I'm learning it. And so it's fine. Fast forward, this happens. And now my priest says, you know, I'm sorry this happened to you and all this kind of thing. And, don't worry, you're still going to go to heaven. Like he was my priest all growing up. I went through all the sacraments with him. He wasn't even my priest at my church at that time. But I had stayed in contact with him because he was just such a cool guy. He too has passed. So God rest your soul. You were wonderful. But this is what he said to me. Okay, so now here are your penance, like go and do the things, right? Like whatever it was, I don't remember like how many Hail Marys I had to say anyway. And then he said, You need to make sure that you don't put yourself in that position again. Okay. So I heard it and I was like, yes, okay, no, that's right. I won't put myself in that position again, which then can be taken in as it was kind of my fault because I put myself in that position. And that's fucked because I did not, excuse my language. I did not put myself in that position. And now I'm just realizing this. And this is what the fun part of layers are. Because I've never really like gone into that part of it. That part of the story was that I was really lucky because I had a really good priest on my side that like absolved me of like feeling like I was going to go to hell. And I didn't remember that piece of it. But he wasn't telling me it was my fault, but he was kind of telling me it was my fault and that I can do better next time. And although that advice on the surface is good advice, because yes, like don't put yourself into the position, that's great advice. If you can do things like don't go into a dark alley alone at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Like that's good advice. But like don't get tutored by the guy in your accounting class? Like, don't do that? Is that what we're saying? Or like, don't trust anybody, don't go to a house party. And that's another thing. I never went to house parties after. And this wasn't even a party. This was literally going to his house for tutoring. And the only reason why I went to his house is because he was like right off of campus. He was right there. So it was like, okay, perfect. And I was really embarrassed that I didn't understand accounting. Like, how dare I not know something stupid? And so that's that part of it. So many layers, so interesting. Okay, so I'm falling behind. Mel is in the house. Hello, Mel. Mel. And she says, "Hey, my beautiful friend. Hello." Okay, I see that you're still writing, and I am going to get the rest of it, but I do want to know how Britt is doing. How is he doing? So I think we confirmed that it was COVID. So let me know. I've been thinking about him and I really hope he's doing okay, but I've heard that it's like everybody that I know, and I know like at least 6 people that have been going through it right now, that it's like 6 days, 5 days of being out cold and then like a couple weeks of being really tired and having a hard time. So, there we go. Okay, so Mel says, "Wow, Lee, that's a whole different kind of torment on top of the trauma and awful evil you went through." Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is. And then Mel says, "Oh, no, he did not. That makes me mad." Okay, so remind me about what part that was. I'm assuming you're talking about the teacher about, I don't know, who knows. Hold on one second. Mel says he's very sick, was getting better, but has come back. Oh man, that sucks. Oh, priest and what he said. Yes. So the priest was wonderful. And I still, like, if he was alive today, I still would be like, be with him. Like, I really did like him. And I think he meant well, and I think that is also a good lesson, is that people that love us, and he loved me, like, I was with him since I was, like, maybe 5 or 6, and then I didn't even go to a Catholic grade school, so he, like, took me under his wing, and me and my sister, so we could do the sacraments, so we could go through all the things, and he, like, tutored us on the side, and he was just, like, really an up and up, really great guy, like, it was nothing shady, it was nothing he was really, really good, and then he left, and he went to another, church that was, like, up north, and I was, like, his pen pal, like, he was really, really cool. So I think he was meaning well, but not realizing the impact of those words. And I didn't realize until now. Um, oh, good question, Jeezy. Says, wasn't the priest supposed to report that crime? Maybe. I don't know. And it's very possible. Mel says exactly. So it's very possible, I will say. I don't know for sure, but it's very possible that he asked me for information about it, who this was, we're going to report. Like, I'm sure he probably went through that because he was a really great guy. I did not want that. This guy was, and I'll tell you another layer of this being like, so what happens in our minds when you're going through something like this is insane. Okay. It's like, and I know insane, like saying things are crazy isn't nice, but it's kind of, when I tell you it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's not rational, but that's what happens. So anyway, so I did not want to press charges or have anybody else press charges. He was very influential in our school, and it was at the university, and he was like, president of the social stupid whatever. His dad was very like influential. Like there were all these things that in my head was like, okay, who are they going to believe, them or him or me? Who am I? Um, it was one time, like all these things, right? That your mind goes through. This is also what my mind went through, you guys. And this is crazy to me. But then I understand when women are in relationships and in marriage and says, okay, you know what? I'm going to give him another chance. And how could you? It's because our brain is not rationally processing this. So for me, I wasn't dating him. We just literally he was tutoring me and this happened. And then my rational, which was not rational, but what my logical mind was saying to me under this trauma was, okay, you know what? I'm going to date him. I'm going to date him because if I date him and then we end up falling in love, because I obviously did not love this man, like it was scary to me. It was horrible. But if we date and he turns out to be a good guy and we fall in love and we get married, then it was just like a semantics of time. It was just like a bad timeline. I just so happened to, have sex with my husband before we got married, but I only had sex with my husband. Like that's how like crazy. Um Catholicism, if you're like really deep into it, um and not understanding the word, but just in it and being like talked at instead of like really understanding what God means for us. Um it is not cool. And so that was my thing. So I actually ended up dating him and I don't even remember a couple months. I don't remember what that looked like. I don't remember any part of that relationship. I just remember that we had a relationship. And I basically only remember it because um I only remember it because there were pictures. That's the only reason. Um, I remember thinking that process of saying, if this works out, then, but it obviously didn't work out because guess what? Newsflash, he was not a good person. So anyway, um, Mel says, do you know if the guy has done that before you and after? He has not done that before me. I'm Did he? I don't know. Who knows? He said he didn't. And so that was another thing that I was like, okay, like this was just like whatever it was. Did he? Maybe. I mean, how do you do that with somebody? I don't know. So I was just lucky. I don't know. So anyway, so Mel says my former response is being checked by mods and has not been sent. Oh, crud. Okay. Um, I didn't realize that there's something like that. Shoot. Well, oh shoot, I don't have my phone. I was just going to say if you want to send it to me on Messenger, Facebook Messenger, then I could look at it. Actually, I can do that. I can do that on my Facebook Messenger. So if there is something that you want me to see, um you can message me over there and I'll see if I can get it on the show. I mean, I won't be able to on the text, but it'll be here. Anyway, it's so fascinating. So this is not at all what this chat was supposed to be. So welcome to my living room. Welcome to ADHD. Welcome to Real Conversations. Um, the conversation was supposed to be about our purpose and how our purpose can help lessen our feelings about lessen our feelings around having suicide, feeling depression, all that kind of thing, having something to live for. And so, for parents, sometimes that's for the kids, which is good. while the kids need you. And the problem with that is when the kids leave and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, now what's my purpose? So, I mean, maybe you have 15 years that you're just like, I don't even care. I'll think about that later. Fine. Um, but having something that we can wake up to and for is really important. One of the things that I know to be true for me and I'm working on to see is this is this part of like a lack of worth or is it just the way that I want to be? And here's what it is. Um, I really do believe that I thrive when I'm trying to reach my potential. And I think that truly is the way that I live my best life. I think that's the way that I am feeling most alive is when I am trying to reach my potential in whatever that is. Health, affection for myself, all of those areas, right? When I am trying to reach my potential, I feel most alive and I feel as far away from depression, stress, anxiety, all of those things. What I have been questioning is because I've been working a lot on my self worth. And so, what I've been questioning is that directly related that it's like, okay, you don't actually need to be reaching your potential. You're just trying to do that because that's like how what's tied into your worth and your worth is directly tied to success. I don't think so. And I might be wrong. I might do more work and then I might realize I'll come on next week and be like, hey guys, actually, we shouldn't be striving for our potential. But I think for me is having purpose, and my purpose is for me to live into my potential, into truly who I am meant to be. I think that for me, if when I wake up and remember that, the day is much better. The day is much easier. It's easeful. Um, and I think that like it doesn't have anything to do, well, maybe it does, but I don't think it has anything to do really with my worth. Because I don't tie like, oh my gosh, I didn't reach my potential today. Because the cool thing with potential is you will never reach it. So no matter how amazing I become, or no matter how amazing I am, there will always be another level that I'll be able to attain, that I'll be able to grow. And it's kind of like everybody talks about the layers of the onion of stripping down all of our traumas. And it's like we think that we got it. And then, you know, excuse me, you take another layer off, and then there's more trauma. There's more things to deal with. There's more things, and people look at those layers as like, oh my gosh, are they ever going to end? Like, there's so much that I have to deal with. But the other thing is that like our potential is like an onion, but that we're able to like build those layers. And so it's kind of like a tree that if you've ever like seen a trunk of a tree, all those rings that are inside of the trunk of the tree are years of experience. So the longer the tree has been alive, especially like maple trees, their trunk becomes bigger and they'll have rings inside of that trunk and you can see how long that has been. And so that's kind of like what happens with us is that the more we grow, the more potential we're able to reach. But then there's always we'll never reach our true potential. So that's why I don't think it's tied to worth. And I think it's tied heavily to our purpose. And if that can be our purpose, that we're just always competing against ourselves, that we're always just wanting trying to be our best and our best, I talk about the 4 agreements all the time. When one of the 4 agreements is to always try your best, that isn't being 100% every single day because we can't be 100% every single day. If we're sick, like our friend Britt, he can't be here tonight because he's sick. He's sick. So he might not even be able to show up 10%. And that is his 100% for that day. That's him trying his best for that day. And so I think maybe it's not called purpose, but that's how I think of purpose. I think of us reaching our potential and just trying to do our best every single day, whatever that looks like. So I just want to go over here, see if we have anything thing. Okay, so nothing for Mel. Oh, hello. So Jan is here. Hello, Jan. I'm so happy that you're here. She says, "Hi, Lee. I love you expressing that you struggle with anxiety, depression. Just knowing that we are not alone means a lot to me. Honey, I love you." And I think that maybe not everybody deals with anxiety and depression, but I would venture to say that it will probably be very difficult to find people that are working on themselves. Like, if you would have asked me like 5 years ago, and I have been doing the work, I've been doing personal development for over 25 years, probably over 30 years actually. Um, and I still was like, happiness is a choice, which it is. But I was like, happiness is a choice. Just choose happiness. Yeah, sometimes it's freaking hard to choose happiness, especially when anxiety is taking over, when depression is taking over, when trauma is like popping up and it's like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? Sometimes it's hard to kind of choose. And that's why the happy formula or framework, I think is really important, because before we go to bed, we can look at those 5 areas and we can find something that we did in at least one of the areas, usually all five, but at least one of the areas that you've done. And if you look at it and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't do anything in any of those 5 areas that I can actually be happy about." Affection for yourself is that you can be grateful for something, and you can write down 3 things that you're grateful for, or just one. Just find one thing that you're grateful for, and that was showing yourself that you love yourself, that you looked at yourself and you said, "You know what? I'm grateful that you fill in the blank." And and then you can say, "Okay, you know what? I'm happy about that. The whole day was shit. The whole month has been shit, but I was able to look outside of all the shit that's happening, and I was able to be grateful for one thing, and I am grateful that I was able to be grateful." Sometimes that's all that matters. Sometimes that's all that we can do. Um, so yeah, Jan, I think we all deal with it. I think that we've all dealt with something, stress, anxiety, depression, something in our life, and probably at some point this year. I and if you haven't, if you're listening to this and you have not dealt with any of those shitty emotions at all this year, please write me an email, thefriendleeshow@gmail.com, and let me know how you did it, because I have never met a person that has gone an entire year without feeling any of those things. So that's that. Um, and I'm really glad you're here, Jan. Mel says, my purpose, I fully believe, is to bless others. Looking back to where my oh, okay, okay, I see. So you weren't able to say suicide, probably. Okay, so looking back to where my suicide thoughts first came to mind, my mental state was so tormented by someone I loved that I began to believe every single word that he told me. Fuck, God damn it. For me, I had to surrender each layer until I came up for air and not feel like I was buried alive. God, it really it bothers me so much that we all have these freaking stories. And Mel, I am so grateful that you were able to get all on the other side of this. Um, it's just so amazing. And your faith, I think, is absolutely beautiful. And you bless so many. You've blessed me with so much. And I'm so grateful that you're a friend of mine. Um, so Mel says, yes, that's it. Find something to be grateful for. And she also says, dig deep if you have to. Exactly. Like when people say, like, find 3 things that you're grateful for. You know what? Sometimes it's just that, oh my gosh, I'm breathing. And sometimes if you're like really deep in it and you don't want to be there, you might not be grateful that you're breathing. You might have just attempted to take your life and it didn't work. And now you're breathing. And now you're like, I'm not even grateful for that. But you can be grateful that you have the ability to think, that you have the ability to process, that you have the ability to see, that you have the ability to take action, even if it's action that we don't want you to take. Just the fact that you're able to have that capacity to be able to take control of what you want to do. I just really hope that anybody that is listening to this, and if you are feeling that, I mean, there are hotlines that you can call, and there are people that you can discuss with, but I want you to know that you can come over, and I want you to come over to the Friendly Show. I do, on Facebook, and I know it sounds really trite and like, "Oh, no, what am I gonna do?" There are a lot of friends in there that I know personally that have attempted suicide multiple times. They're still around. Um, that have had suicide ideation that's going through it right now. Um, so we are very open about having conversations about what's actually going on. And it is a happy group. And when I say it's a happy group, what I mean is we are always striving to look for the happy moments because we can have happy moments even in the despair, even in the grief, even in all of the things. And what that does is it relieves us a little bit. It helps lessen our nervous system's response of constantly being in fight or flight, constantly being in hyperactivity mode to hyper sensitivity, hyper aware, hyper vigilance, all of this kind of stuff. And when we look for those moments, in that particular moment, that one moment, we're able to feel a little bit of calm, a little bit of relief. And it's not easy, but sometimes that moment is all that we need just to be able to say, okay, not all is lost. Okay. And sometimes we just don't give ourselves that. And so that's why I think it's so important that we're being intentional with our happiness and not in a way of like just put on a smile and just buck up and whatever those stupid sayings that everybody says. That's not what it is. It's not about faking it. It's about giving yourself that gift of finding those moments. um Jan says, I have a friend that both her mom and dad just passed away 3 weeks apart. Oh my god, I am so sorry, Jan, and your friend. She has been hospitalized for depression. Okay. So that is good. I mean, she's in good care right now, hopefully. Um, she's going through a lot. So I send her hugs on Messenger 3 times a day just to let her know that I'm here for her. I think that's beautiful. Jan, I don't know. Okay. So again, not a healthcare professional, not sure if this is the right advice, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. Cause if we were sitting having coffee, this is what I would say to you. I'm not always appropriate, but it comes from my heart. Are you friends enough with her that she knows that you go through whatever you go through, fill in the blank, anxiety, depression, just whatever it is? I don't know what you go through specifically, but does she know? And I don't know if you were here on the beginning of the show, but we were talking about, so right now it's Suicide Awareness Month. And one of the things that people don't want to talk about is they don't want to ask people, like, are you having thoughts of taking your life? They don't want to ask that question because they don't want to put that thought into their mind. But I can assure you that if people have that thought in their mind, it's in their mind. Even if they're not thinking it at that moment, you bringing it up is not going to be like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to just jump on that and do that tonight. I wasn't even thinking about it. That's not the way that it works. But asking questions like that and knowing about that and then having conversations about it, it helps because then people, like you said, Jan, it's good to not feel like you're alone. And so you don't have to have attempted suicide. You don't even have to have ideation around suicide, but you can just, if you've had anxiety, if you've had depression, if you've had any kind of feeling that was just not what people are talking about, not what people are like, doing the Instagram quotes about. Um, I'd share it with her so she knows she's not alone. Hugging, I am a big hugger. I think that they're really important and they are. So keep doing that. 3 times a day is beautiful. So keep doing that. But also having those vulnerable conversations, I think are really important. Really important. Um, okay. So Jeezy also says, do you believe in Jeezy? I gotta say, I absolutely love your questions because you really get in there. So, do you believe therapy is supposed to help you get past trauma? or help you deal with trauma through medications. Me living in New York today. Hold on one second. I didn't know you lived in New York. Are you in the city? Wait, did we already have this conversation? You're not in the city, right? You're in New York State. Please let me know. Anyway, me living in New York today, and every year they are honoring the heroes from 9/11. Correct. Yes. Is it wrong if I don't want to forget? I don't want to go to therapy to forget. Okay. So, again, not a healthcare professional. I don't exactly know what the purpose or what it's supposed to do, but I do believe that it's different for everybody, and I do believe that therapy, I mean, there's a million different kinds of therapy, first of all, which I used to be like, "Oh, just go to a therapist and go talk to them." There's all kinds of modalities that they use. There's all kinds of um, different types of therapy, so it depends on that. I'm going to go through the comments. I'm going to come back to you, GZ. Okay. But I'm going to go through the comments because I see that Mel says something about GZ. So I want to like bring that back up and then we'll have a conversation. Okay. So, because if Mel would have just blurted that out while we were on our living room couch, I would have stopped talking, let her talk, and then I would have come back, hopefully. So Jan says, yes. Okay. So good. So she does know that you've dealt with that. So I'm assuming that's what you're saying, Jan. So, what I would do is I would be reminding her of that and just saying, I'm with you. I'm there. Is there anything that you want to talk about that you don't feel like you can talk about with anybody else? Please know you can talk about it with me if you're in a position, Jan, to be able to take that on. If you're not, that's also okay. Okay. So Mel says, GZ, I believe therapy is supposed to help you deal and help you move through it. If meds is what you need, then that's okay. Sometimes meds help and not enable. My hubby takes meds for depression. It's finding the right one. Sometimes we just need a happy pill, my opinion. And then Mel also says, finding the right therapy takes time and patience. Okay, so this, when you said sometimes we just need a happy pill, I'm all for that too. So I used to be like, I'm not going to take any medication. I don't take any medication for anything. Like, I don't think you should be doing it. And now the more that I'm learning about it is that they are come a long way with medication, and sometimes we need it. Sometimes we need it. So, um, if your healthcare professional thinks that you need it and you believe that you need it, it might work. It might work for you. Like Mel said, it's a matter of finding the right one. And Britt, um, yeah, that he's on meds and sometimes it works. And then sometimes you're on the wrong med, or sometimes your med worked and then it doesn't work, unfortunately. You become whatever it is, like, yeah, what is that called? Like, where not come immune, but like your body doesn't process it the same way. And so all these kinds of things. So I'm going to get back to your thing. And that's kind of what I kind of wish that like in real conversations when we were just talking, that people could like hold up cue cards and be like, this is what the thought that I just said. So then we can have a conversation. Then I can come back and be like, oh, this is the card that I wanted to like get back to, but my ADHD mind didn't work. So I'll scroll back up to that, GZ. So hang in there. So Mel also says, Jan, I've lost both my parents at a young age. It sucks. I'm here for her. She can reach out to me at any time. I'm a good listener. She is. We'll be praying for your friend. Jan, that is 100%. Mel is not just like blowing smoke just to like, she means that. And she is such a sweet, sweet woman. Mel, you're just awesome. Sarah says, I think it's about acceptance. Okay, so Sarah is saying about, so this is for you, GZ, okay? I think it's about acceptance and letting go enough to continue living our best life, but not forgetting, because remembering helps us to also respond better in the future. Boom. So that right there is yes. So I could not have said that better myself, Sarah. So the whole thing about forgetting and not, okay, hold on one second. So Sarah also says, it's like a scar. It's there and the memory can come, but it won't stop us in our tracks. Yes. So, GZ, when you're talking about you don't want, let me just reread exactly what you were saying. Because I have a tendency sometimes to paraphrase and it's not exactly what it was. So, um, So I don't want to go to therapy to forget. Yes. Um, so I don't think that you have to go to therapy to forget. I think what Sarah said about acceptance and letting go enough so then we can thrive in our life, I think that's what it's all about. We need to be, well, we don't need to do anything actually. That's a lie. So we can live whatever life we want to live. But if we want to live a life where we're thriving, if we want to live a life that we're just living, even if you don't feel like you're in a position right now to thrive, you just want to feel alive. Um, we need to be in a position that we're calm enough to be able to live that life. If we're constantly at a everything is emergency, everything like and you can't handle anything, and you know those people, and you can't handle anything, you're not going to be able to live your life. You're not going to be able to have good relationships. You're not going to be able to have a good relationship with yourself. You're not going to be able to have a good relationship with your family. You're not going to be able to excel at work. You're not going to be able to take on your health because you're not going to have the time because you're going to be spending so much time and energy in dealing with every fire that hits your brain, even if they're not real fires. You know what I'm saying? So, the therapy, in my opinion, is to find the tools to be able to help us not just deal, but to be able to accept what's happened. So, when Sarah said it's all about acceptance, it's really true. Um, what I need to do, like for me personally, what I need to do about the rape part is that I need to accept the way that it went down. I need to accept that I did not leave, that I just tried to use my voice and my voice wasn't listened to. And that's what happened. And I can't change it. It's happened. And I need to move on from that. Um, and it's just so interesting because there's like, from a rational standpoint, anybody would look at that and be like, that happened 30 years ago. Like, get over it. And I don't let it consume me day to day. But boy, it sidelines me. Boy, it just like pushes me into the boards when it comes up, when people have conversations about it, when Roe versus Wade ends up coming up, even though I didn't have to deal with abortion. I didn't have to deal with that. I was blessed that nothing happened in that respect. But boy, that comes up, then rape comes up, and then I'm right back at it. So I'm with Sarah that it's more of an acceptance and letting go so then we can move on, but it's also not forgetting. And so she said it perfectly when she says, because also remembering helps us to also respond better in the future, right? So if we just forgot all about the things, we wouldn't learn from them. And so now I know that if I, God forbid, was ever in a situation like that, I've replayed it over enough times about what I would do that if I was put in this position, do I know that I would handle it better? No, I don't. I don't know what would happen, but I would like to believe that now I have the tools to be able to know that I would handle it differently. And it's only because I've grown from it. And it's only because I've had that experience that has allowed me to make different choices in the future. Right. So I think therapy, if you've never done therapy before and you feel like there is like, hey, maybe it would be something for me, but I also don't want it because of fill in the blank. For you, it's you don't want to forget. For some people, it's I don't want to be judged. For other people, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go deep. It's up to you. You get to control everything. So for me, I'm going to therapy, I'm doing all this stuff, and then it becomes too deep and I'm too much into it and I just don't feel like I can handle it. I get to back off a little bit. I don't have to go, it's not a race. I don't have to go, 180 down the highway. I can take an exit and I can go off and I can like maybe just go and like sit at the park for a little bit and then I can hop back on and get on the expressway and then I can go again, right? But I don't have to constantly be full throttle going forward. And you don't have to do that with your personal growth. You don't have to do that with your therapy. Um, But having a therapist and having a therapist that you trust and that you relate to sometimes might be hard to find that person. And so, the other advice that I'm going to give you as your friend is, if you haven't done therapy before, um, don't just, judge all therapy based on the first therapist session that you have, because you might not click. Because then that's kind of like saying, okay, don't judge. Like if you were to judge everybody based on the first date that you had. And so you have one date with some person that you just don't connect with, that you're not attracted to, that you're just like, oh my gosh, we can't even, it's like pulling teeth to have a conversation with this person. And then you're like, well, I will never date again because it just doesn't work for me. It's not true. It's just that person didn't work for you. And so, same thing with a therapist. There's all kinds of different modalities, there's all kinds of different things. And I think it's absolutely worth us exploring that. So, yeah. So, Jeezy, I am so sorry. I am inferring and assuming it may I might be jumping here. I am so sorry if you were directly affected by 9/11. All of us were affected by it. I mean, that for our generation, it was one of those things that, like, I think everybody can remember where they were. I can't imagine if you were there or if you have people that were directly affected. So, my love goes to you. And by going to therapy and dealing with what you saw or what you dealt with or what has happened, I don't think you will forget. I think, I mean, when they say never forget, never forgotten, it's true. And, but we're able to find the ways of moving through so then we can live our best life. And you know what? Did you just see that? There's like I don't know what that is, little dust fly. Anyway, um, yeah, I think that's the key. So I would love to hear, Jeezy, about what you decide to do. And Sarah, thank you so, so much for being here. Mel, thank you for all of your advice. You guys, this was so cool. Jan, thank you. And my prayers are to you and your friend. Um, and just let's all stay together. Okay. So I hope that you guys will come over to the Facebook group during the week. If not, I'll see you next Wednesday. Next week, we're going to be talking about partnerships. And I think that'll be a good conversation. Or who knows what we'll talk about. But I'll be here. I hope you'll be here too. I love you guys. Big hugs. And oh, Mel, she says, you're welcome. And I love you, Lee. I love you too, Mel. All of you guys, thank you so much. And if you're listening to this in the audio version, hello, thank you for being here. And next week, I hope you head on over to either YouTube or Twitch and you join us live. All right. Love you guys. Bye.